Welcome, everyone. It's Peggy Hall back with another exclusive interview, this time with Cece Doucette. She is going to tell us all about EMF and what we can do about it. She is with Massachusetts for Safe Technology. Cece, this is the first time we've met. I am thrilled to hear about your solutions, remedies, resources, and also what we need to be concerned about. So why don't you just begin? Let us know how you got engaged in all of this,
Mhm.
involved, and then what we need to do and be aware of.
Sure. To get started, I'd like to share my screen. Can you see that slide?
Looks great.
Okay, great. So, like many of you, I had no idea there was anything to be concerned with today's wireless technology. And I used to help run our local education foundation here in Massachusetts when my daughters were in school. And we kept hearing about this 21st century classroom and how our kids were going to need all this great new technology to succeed in the world. And our budgets had been cut to the bone year after year. So we, as a district, didn't have any extra money lying around to get all this wireless infrastructure and iPads and Chromebooks and what we were being told our kids would need. So, good doobie parents, we jumped in, started doing fundraiser. We got, wireless infrastructure. We got the Chromebooks, we got the iPads, the smart boards, the minis and what we thought was all this great new technology. And then one night at book group, a girlfriend of mine who's an electrical engineer was reading a book called Zapped by Anne Louise Gittleman. And she was talking about the fact that there could be biological effects from the radiation coming off of all of this wireless. So, not long after that, something else crossed my desk, and I started to look into the peer reviewed, published scientific literature. And Peggy, I was astounded. There are literally thousands of studies all over the world that show this is extraordinarily biologically harmful, and especially to children whose bodies are still under development. So we became the first in the United States to even have this little sign hanging in our classrooms that says, turn these things off when you're not using them. Only turn on the Wi-Fi, like the routers, when you need them, and only use the device away from the body. Put it on a solid surface away from you. So we did that. And then I started talking to my legislators about it. And I've helped to introduce legislation in Massachusetts. But there's groundbreaking work coming out of New Hampshire. And I'm excited to share that with you in just a little bit. On this journey, I've had the privilege of meeting many of the world's leading scientists and doctors whose life work is this radio frequency radiation, or what we might call EMF, the electromagnetic fields of radiation that are pulsed off of all these wireless devices. Others will call it microwave radiation because it is in the microwave segment of the electromagnetic spectrum. Those are a lot of terms I never wanted to know, but here we are. That's about as scientific as we'll get with that. But I helped to establish a little nonprofit out of Europe initially called Wireless Education, where we've taken this huge issue and distilled it down to little tiny courses that you can complete in about a half an hour. So literally, you could train your entire school in a half an hour. We have one for the workforce as well. So we just want to create a win-win, get the information out there, have enough confidence to make choices to protect ourselves, and then especially protect our children. So as you mentioned, a bunch of us around Massachusetts got together, and we now meet monthly for Massachusetts for Safe Technology and compare notes. Who's succeeded in fighting a cell tower here? Who's gotten their town bylaws updated to make sure that small cells or 5G antennas can't show up right in your front yard? Or who's succeeded in getting a smart meter taken off their home when the radiation was making them sick. So we provide a forum for people, and we invite people from all over to join us. You can go out to this website here and just sign up with us. You'll get the invitations to our meetings if you're interested. And then somebody down at the National Institutes of Health found my work and asked if I would co-chair the technology panel for the Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference. And this was so exciting because we got to go down and probably for the first time talk to a bunch of our government agencies, but also to doctors, hospitals, architects, city planners who had no idea that wireless is so toxic. So I like to share this link here because we brought with us one of the world's leading scientists, Dr. Martin Pall, Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada, who, when he retired, figured out just what we've done, and he's trying to set this right. And then Theodora Scarrato, who's the executive director of the Environmental Health Trust, who their group has just done incredible work all over the world and has arguably the best database on wireless radiation in our world today. And then Peter Sullivan of Clear Light Ventures, both of his sons, when they came into the preschool years, were on the autism spectrum. They were having the communication issues. And he did what most parents will do, and that's to clean out the diet, get to a clean organic diet, detox the heavy metals. But it wasn't until he realized he had to get the radiation away from the children that his children began to improve drastically.
Wow.
And I had never heard anybody say they got a child off the spectrum, and neither one of Peter's sons today are on the autism spectrum.
Wow.
So, yeah, so if there are de novo mutations, that means that it didn't come from mom or dad, it came from somewhere in the environment. So if a child is suffering from de novo mutations, you might really want to tune into this. And there are pediatricians who will tell you the same thing. Do a digital detox and see what happens. So lots of great things. I was really honored to be asked to be a speaker at the EMF Medical Conference last year. And they brought together world-leading scientists and doctors and others to teach our healthcare teams what they need to know, because so many people are being misdiagnosed when they're actually suffering from microwave sicknesses. If you look at the Havana syndrome that's been in the media of late, those same headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, dizziness are being experienced by far too many people in the general population today, and their doctors don't know how to recognize it. So we are so grateful to have 24.5 continuing medical education credits available today. So lots of great resources. So what finally got my school to pay attention to this was when they read the legal fine print. Peggy, do you by chance use an iPhone yourself?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Let me have you and anybody who's listening with us today, take your iPhone out and go into settings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once you get to settings, scroll down just a little bit and hit general.
Okay.
Okay. On an old phone, you'd hit about at the top, but I suspect most people have upgraded. So you go all the way down to the bottom from general, and you'll see legal and regulatory right
I'm
there.
on the old one. I have about.
Okay.
Yeah,
So go down now.
a 5-year-old phone is now old.
That's excellent. I love that you didn't just swap it out for something shinier. So if you scroll down all the way to the bottom from about, then you'll see legal and regulatory or legal.
I see certificate trust settings.
Go back one, go back to general.
Okay.
And scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Yes, I've got legal and regulatory.
Okay, so hit that. And you can just remember the acronym GAL, like this gal came on your program with you today. So general and then down to legal and regulatory. Okay. And then you see a little list and hit RF exposure. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Once you're in this legal fine print, it tells us a couple of really important things. One, this device was tested at a distance from the body. And so what they're telling you there is that if you use this device in your hand or tucked into your bra or tucked into your yoga waistband or put in your back pocket or put in a gentleman's shirt pocket or a suit pocket, you're going to be exceeding the FCC limits for public radiation exposure. And unbeknownst to most of us, that legal fine print has been in there all along. And it was when our school district read that legal fine print that they had a legal uh-oh moment, because they've been talked into giving these devices to all the children and the teachers, and they're all sitting under these wireless access points that tell you to stay much further away than what we're actually doing. So when I first fell down the rabbit hole with this, I had a hard time getting my mind around it because it's invisible. So I learned there are meters that you can purchase to see this invisible toxin. So this one that's shown on the right here is called the Safe and Sound Pro 2 meter. And this is the meter that was recommended at the medical conference. So now doctors are buying these and putting them on loan to their patients. So in my home, when I turn this on in my home, we see that it goes down into the green. And in my home right now, I'm hitting a top level radiation exposure of 4.7, and the unit is called a microwatt per square meter. So in my home, I'm at 4.7. And we do have a couple of utility meters on the far side of my house that pulse radiation 24/7. In our state, they don't allow us to opt out of that yet, but we've got a bill to try. But I want to give you a demonstration of what happens when I take my cell phone out of airplane mode, so we can see what kind of radiation do we choose to expose ourselves to every day. And it is a choice. Once we know, then there's so many easy things we can do to have, a better, safer solution. So this is from one device. And I'm gonna go right back into airplane mode because I prefer to only take it out of airplane mode in an emergency when I have to make a call. But what that maximum just jumped from, remember we were at 4.7, we're now at 86,400.
Wow.
Right? And that's from one device. So in my town, I went after a local grant to put one of these on loan so that anybody in my town can come take it out, take it home, measure everything you've got in your house, and then make some choices. A doctor and I went after another one for another Massachusetts library. They've now got one out in a town called Pittsfield, Massachusetts, in their library, where Verizon put a cell tower right on top of a neighborhood, and 17 children and adults got very ill, and the pollinators have disappeared. So getting your data is important. That's really the only way to know, because now with 5G and the Internet of Things, they want to put one of these radiation transmitters in just about every device that you can think of. So my cable station was very generous to come to my home, and we did a 23-minute walkthrough of the decked cordless phones, the computer, the printer, the laptops, the microwave oven, all the common areas that we now have been talked into having this technology. And then we offer solutions for what can I do to get down to something as low as 4. And the science recommends being at 10 or under indoors. And in your sleeping areas, they indicate we should be at 0.1. So our body can do proper cell repair and regeneration while we sleep. So it is doable, but it is a mind blower when we first find out. You got to be kidding me. You mean maybe that's why my pinky finger tingles when I hold a cell phone, or maybe that's why I feel wonky after I've been on the phone for a while, or my heart starts to race, or I get ringing in my ears. A lot of people have symptoms, but let's take a look at what the science is telling us. We'll start with the long-term effects. Child and adult cancers. Our own government completed a 20-year study back in the day when 2G and 3G were the technology of the day. They started it back then. In 2018, they finished it and had an unprecedented 3-day peer review at the National Institutes of Health. And they determined clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. Now, clear evidence is the highest of 5 categories that can be classified with a toxin. And this is the world's gold standard organization for toxics research. Clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage. So the industry, when one of these good studies comes out, they'll spin it and say, oh, that's just one study, you need more. Well, right on the heels of our government study, the Ramazzini Institute in Italy came out with another large study that corroborated everything that we found. So we don't need more science. What we need is an informed public and the right to choose safe technology. The infertility studies are what got me going on this issue. I started reading the science where they've taken male human sperm and exposed it to a laptop with the antennas on. It changed the DNA, which is our roadmap to grow a proper anything from humans to plants to animals to biomes. It changed the DNA. It slowed the motility and it caused far fewer sperm to be viable in just 4 hours of exposure.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Right? That was my reaction as well. And I have two daughters. My oldest had just gone up to college, and of course, she went with a laptop. My youngest had just gone into high school, and we gave her a laptop for Christmas, which, of course, they're both using right on top of their reproductive organs. And now Kaiser Permanente and others have studies linking this to miscarriages and all sorts of horrible outcomes. Neurotoxicity. Peggy, you know that even before our pandemic, we were at epidemic proportions of anxiety, depression. We have seen suicidal ideation among our children like never before. Well, the science is showing us this is a neurotoxin. When we talk about a signal going at megahertz speeds, what that means is 1,000,000 times per second, this radiation is going boom, 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 boom. It's just jackhammering us with these spiked, erratic pulses. And when we get into the gigahertz range, that's 1,000,000,000 times in 1 second that it's going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And it's like saying to the cell tower, your cell phone, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? Here. And so this is going on invisibly all over us all the time now. And so Dr. Hugh Taylor runs the OBGYN at Yale Medical. And Dr. Taylor's research shows that when you expose these rodents to this radio frequency radiation, these mice come out of the mama bouncing off the walls like they've got ADHD. Dr. Martha Herbert founded the Autism Lab at Mass General Hospital here, and she sees huge correlations between what the scientific literature is telling us and what she sees in the families in her care. Alzheimer's, Dr. Martin Pall just put out a new paper this month indicating that Alzheimer's is coming on at earlier and earlier ages. It used to take about 25 years before those symptoms would be noticeable. When you're in your 70s, when you're in your 80s, now we're seeing it in our 60s, our 50s, our 40s, all the way down to some people in their 20s. So this is not a toy. This is not something to take lightly. I know we've all become very dependent on this, but there are excellent solutions, and we'll get to that. But I want to show you this diagram here from Dr. Om Gandhi. These diagrams here are heads tilted sideways. So the little yellow part is the ear. So when you put a cell phone up to an adult's brain, Peggy, for you and I, it's going in about a third of the way, absorbing into our brain. When you do that to a 10-year-old child, it's going about 3/4 of the way into the brain. And on a 5-year-old child, that radiation is penetrating their brain almost the entire way through. So they're not just little children or little adults. Their central nervous system is still under construction. Their immune system is still under construction. Their skulls are thinner, so more radiation is getting through, and their brains have a higher water content. So that's why they're absorbing literally more radiation than you and I, and it is not good for us. In the short term, I have a hunch many of your viewers are going to start recognizing some of this. The Americans with Disabilities acknowledges that if there's one or two or more things that are impairing your day-to-day life, then you are a protected class. And we have the Jobs Area Network already recognizes electromagnetic sensitivities. So we have pockets of this where it is already formally recognized, but insomnia is one of the biggest things. Time and again, after I give a talk like this, people come back and say, Cece, I didn't want to know this. I didn't want to believe it. But I also recognized a lot of these symptoms. So I turned everything off and oh my gosh, I slept through the night for the first time in ages. And it can be that simple, right? Headaches, stabbing, searing headaches, migraines that your doctors can't figure out, nosebleeds or ear bleeds, chronic fatigue where you're just constantly wiped out, pain from unidentified sources, skin heating, flushing, rashes, tingling. We have little antennas in our skin that when this radiation hits it can cause a lot of skin abnormalities. Depending on your biological makeup, heartbeats that go too fast or too slow. Cognitive impairment's a big one. You know, as we age, we naturally decline in our cognitive abilities, but we are seeing huge decreases in cognitive abilities today that were not like this 10 or 20 years ago. Anger and behavior issues. One of the most disturbing things that I witnessed at that medical conference was when more than one of the doctors said, you know, these mass shootings and other societal horrors that we're seeing, we can very well likely expect to see more of this because in the science, we see that this radio frequency is changing the gray matter of the brain. So it's very serious. And as I said, these other neurological disorders. And it's not just you and I'll just quickly go through this. So our poor little pollinators are getting walloped out there by all of this radiation. The birds too, they're meant to be synchronized to the Earth's electromagnetic field. And now that we've introduced this huge layer of electrosmog, it's dysregulating their own biological systems. And with 5G, they're using these new millimeter waves that are the same size as our poor little pollinators. So if we don't get on this and get on it fast, we're headed toward a very unhealthy planet. The scientific literature and the IEEE, which is the Professional Organization of Engineers and Electronic Engineers, they're already identifying that wireless systems consume 10 times more energy than the smart, safe solution, which is just run everything through a cable and turn off the wireless systems. You get a much better speed, you get much better reliability, your data and your privacy are all better accounted for when you're not sending your signals through the air. In fact, a Greenpeace analyst said if the wireless industry were a country, they would be the 5th largest consumer of energy in the world. And wow, that was a decade ago. Imagine where we are today with all of this and now all the satellites that are being lost. But you can go, look at this link here and you will find the human atrocities that happen to get the many, many minerals that go into each one of our electronic devices. And if we knew all of this, we would never just toss our cell phone aside or any of our electronics without going through a full useful life cycle. But the industry wants you to replace it all the time because it's good for their bottom line. So little things we can start noticing is how do we use our personal devices? Every time we stream something, that consumes a huge amount of energy. Every time we send and receive some cute little emoji, that's using energy. All this charging we're doing of our wireless devices. And then in the background, all these apps that we've been seduced into putting on our devices are constantly doing updates and using energy. So lots of little hacks we can tune into once our head stops spinning. But I kept scratching my head going, if this is as bad as the science that I'm reading is showing me, why don't we know? And I fell down the rabbit hole in 2013. And then in 2015, this captured agency report came out from Harvard, their law school center for ethics, how the Federal Communications Commission is dominated by the industries it presumably regulates. So for their graphic, they chose a revolving door. And that's exactly what we've got is people from the wireless industry are now running our federal agencies. And they are not looking after the public health or safety. They're looking after corporate profits. So people can read captured agency. The FDA or Food and Drug Administration actually commissioned that $30 million study we spoke of with the National Toxicology Program that determined clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage. Well, the gentleman today who heads up the FDA radiation area, he turned around to the FCC and said, keep doing what you're doing. No need to change the game book now. And one might ask what would possess this Dr. Jeffrey Shuren to do that. Well, when you look into his background, he's married to a woman who's a partner in a law firm that represents the wireless industry. So we've got captured agencies all over. And many of our others, like the CDC and the EPA, they were defunded when the industry wrote their own law back in 1996. So that's why we don't know. So we have to be very careful where we get our information from. I won't go into details because I know we're getting short on time, but lots of great resources to say, look carefully at who you think is a trusted resource, all the way up to the World Health Organization.
Oh, that is so true, Cece. Let's end here. We will be doing a part two, definitely, because now we want to talk more about things that we can do to outwit this. The very first slide that you had about keeping your device on a solid surface and not on your body. I'm one of those people that carry this around in my pocket. I'm not going to do that anymore. I normally do turn it off, but
Yeah. Or
and
at least
also,
keep it in airplane mode and make sure
yes,
that it's got 6 different antennas in there: cellular, data, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, locator, and hotspot. And each one is independently going, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? All the time. So keep it in airplane mode. Make sure those antennas are off. I know on the eye products, sometimes they turn themselves back on,
they do. I know.
right? So we can't take anything for granted. But if it's in airplane mode, you can still use your clock, your alarm, your camera, your mute, whatever you've downloaded on there.
Great.
Enjoy it. Just don't hold it or keep it near you when it's actively transmitting.
Cece, this information is so well researched. You gave links, you exposed step by step. I love your story that you sort of stumbled upon this and then you became an activist, which is such an inspiration to us all. And I can't wait to have you back for part two. I am up against the clock for another
Sure.
interview right now. So let's follow up, and I will also put a link for everybody to contact you below. And I will also send you a copy of this interview for you to use for your, however you would like it as well. So stay tuned, everybody who's been watching here with Cece. We're going to be hearing all about part two. We could be having a part 20. I mean, there's so much to talk about. And I really appreciate you opening the door for those who may just be going down the rabbit hole and learning about all of these harmful or the side effects of these devices, the harmful side effects, and how to mitigate them. And I know personally, I have moved areas because I do not want to be by these cell phone towers. It's so important. I'm going to get one of those devices. In fact, I'm going to be probably branching out more and more into the EMF education to help people understand that, because it is so directly tied in to what these evildoers are doing. I personally have noticed the lack of bugs, of snails, of worms, of the pollinators. I have not seen a ladybug in years, and these are just a very small part of the symptom of what's going on. So let's wrap up here for now, Cece. We'll follow up via email, and thank you so much for bringing this very important information to our attention here over at peggyhall.tv. And everybody who's watching, stay tuned for part two. We'll have that airing soon. Take care
Thank
now.
you so much, Peggy. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Take care, Cece. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.